All right, we are live streaming. 3, 2, 1.
Wednesday, October 6th. Testing, how about now? Still no?
You want to talk to the
How about now?
Try it one more time.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put on the wrong. Let's try it one more time.
Oh, that sounded promising. Okay, now can you hear me? Yes. Super. Okay, so good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, October 6th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Before we begin, I would like to emphasize that we have made an important change to our meeting format tonight. The public comment period for non-agenda items has been moved to the end of the meeting. This rearrangement is in recognition of the current increase in polarization and intensity of opinion about public education, which resulted in an unusually disrupted and heated public comment period during our last meeting. This decision was not made to discourage public comments. Instead, it is intended to facilitate a more relaxed, open, respectful public comment period where the board can focus on comments without distraction. Having the non-agenda comment period at the end of the meeting allows the board to conduct their essential business in a more efficient manner, facilitates the predictability of the timing of agenda items for presenters and for audience members who have come to listen to or comment on tonight's agenda items, and allows more flexibility in the length of the non-agenda comment period. Both comment periods will still be limited to 15 minutes in length initially. The length of each comment period can be extended by consensus of the board if the board feels the comments are contributing new information that is relevant to board discussions or school operations, and if time allows. If there are repetitive comments on a particular subject, the board may decide to cap the number of comments on that subject to allow other items to be presented, and may encourage the superintendent to schedule a public forum, public hearing, or other more appropriate venue for the topic to be addressed. Please be advised that if you have signs at the meeting, they must be constructed from cardboard, paper, or other non-hazardous materials. Please be considerate of others and be sure not to block the view of other attendees, and make sure your signs follow the school's code of conduct. Security personnel may remove signs that do not follow these guidelines. Audience members must sit during the meeting, please, and should not move the seats as they have been purposefully placed to conform to current health guidelines for your safety and the safety of those around you. Thank you for attending this evening. We will now begin the public portion of the meeting for the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the board has finished up their executive session. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please? Or the agenda as stated, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? And I have any items that are going to be pulled from the consent agenda this evening?
Can you pull 3.1, the memorandum of agreement with Miramos?
Or anybody else have any items to pull from the consent agenda? All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated, please? All in favor? All right, so we now go to items removed from the consent agenda. We have several. Why don't we start off with item number 3.1, the memorandum of agreement.
Sure, this memorandum of agreement is a mandated approval for school boards and school districts throughout Westchester County in order to participate in free COVID testing for faculty that are not vaccinated and for students with parental permission. So by executing this memorandum tonight, we can begin working with the county and Miramos to draft our testing protocol. The governor's regulation is that all non-vaccinated staff, regardless of their function in the district, must be tested for COVID every week. And this memorandum allows us to work with the county and the county to work with Miravis, a testing company, to do that. They will provide the tests, they will analyze the tests, they will give the reports back to the faculty as well as the school district. That's a really important distinction because we are not in the business of COVID testing, nor should we be. So this agreement allows a third party to come in and do that service on behalf of Westchester County. That's the key. This is an agreement with the county by way of Miravis. For students, parents will have to provide consent. And we're working with the county also on what that testing regimen will be. The early expectation was that the school district would randomly select 20% of students to be tested at least once a week. We're still working with the county of Miravis on what the best course of action would be to complete those tests. The tests are saliva-based, so they're very quick in terms of administration. And school districts around the county and the state, really there are two pathways. One is to conduct the tests in school during the school day. The other option is to send the tests home with students, and the test will be conducted under the supervision of their parents. No child will be tested, nor no child can be tested without parental consent. So this is not a mandated testing regimen for students. It will be an opt-in. There'll be documentation that the county will provide us to give to parents for them to opt in. So this action tonight starts really the beginning of our testing protocol. I know we have a lot of staff here. In the next couple of days, we will roll out a plan of how staff can identify their vaccination status to us, so we know who our testing pool is in terms of non-vaccinated staff. It is a mandate that if you are a non-vaccinated staff member, you must be tested weekly. That is so far held up in the courts, and that is an expectation of the governor and the health department. While there are some people who have challenged that, it has been upheld that it's a condition of employment per the governor. So this agreement allows us to really begin that plan and now officially partner with Miravis and the county in terms of setting up a regimen.
Okay, so it sounds like there's still details to be ironed out, and we can expect more information.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, can I get a motion to approve item number 3.1? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. The next items that were pulled from our consent agenda are our donations. We have 3 donations this evening. Our first donation is the approval of 2 TI 84+ CE calculators for the math department. The district has received a donation of 2 TI 84+ CE math calculators for the math department from Thomas Knight. Thank you very much, Mr. Knight. The second one is a grant for $750 from the Special Olympics of New York due to the district's participation with unified sports. Joe, do you want to say anything about our unified sports?
Yeah, the Unified Sports Program began a couple of years ago. It was in partnership with the Special Olympics of New York State, a number of school districts around Westchester County, and then ultimately New York State. It's an opportunity for our students to compete with their peers, both at the school, but also local school districts. While we received grant money to begin the program a number of years ago, there still is an out-of-pocket cost to the district, and a donation like this helps minimize that cost. And we're really proud to be able to support the program. And if you can get to a game, an outdoor event, or a basketball game, it really is fascinating to watch the spirit and watch the school community come together. So we're very thankful for this donation so we can support the financial end of the program.
It's an amazing program. I think the kids really enjoy it. And lastly, but definitely not least, the district has received a grant from the Italian American Committee on Education in the amount of $1,838.54 to purchase books for the Italian program at the Hendrick Hudson High School. So thank you very much to the Italian American Community on Education. Can I get a motion to approve these donations? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. All right. That brings us to our superintendent's report.
Yes, very briefly, the first item are COVID-related updates. We have unfortunately had a few positive cases in our district that resulted in quarantining. We communicated with all the staff and families that were involved and did that rather quickly. We are posting every positive test that results in quarantine on our website. We communicated that a couple of Fridays ago of where parents can go to watch the positivity in our school district. And unlike last year, the reporting requirement has changed. We are only reporting to the Department of Health positive cases that result in quarantine. That has actually sped up the process of identifying folks. It's sped up the paperwork process. And what that is also has done is it's allowed the health department to go back to being the health department and really running this part of contact tracing. It's not uncommon that we hear from the health department about a positive case before we hear from a staff member or a parent. So we are trending in the right direction in terms of the health department regaining some of the control over their roles and responsibilities. Of course, we will do what we're asked to do in the name of safety, but we appear in our county to also, in terms of positivity rate, to be trending in the right direction. I've said a number of times, every Monday morning, superintendents from throughout Westchester meet with the county executive and the health department. Positivity rate in Westchester is down 2/3 in the last 6 weeks. So we are trending in the right direction. However, it is possible that we may see an artificial spike in positive cases as we and other schools begin their testing regimen. That's expected. That was expected last year. As you might recall, school districts were forced to engage in COVID testing based on their community positivity rate. And for about the first month, that rate increased because they were conducting more tests. So all things COVID, please make sure you check out our website. We, over the last couple of weeks, made updates, provided updates from the Department of Health and CDC regarding mask wearing. When we have updates of note, we include those and timestamp them in our FAQ. But hopefully, based on that county data that was reported on Monday, we are all trending in the right direction. The second update I had, we just talked about in terms of COVID testing, and so I'll skip that. And the last update I have is the district's kickoff of our next phase of the strategic plan. We've asked family members and staff to respond to a survey indicating if they're interested in serving on any number of committees that will support our organization's next 3 to 5 years. It will be an opportunity to be part of the next chapter of Hendrick Hudson. Obviously, it goes without saying, the school community has gone through quite a bit in the last 4+ years with Indian Point and now Holtec coming in and decommissioning. And some organizational decisions we had to make because of our financial forecast in the future. So if you are interested, please make sure you complete the Google survey. If you can't commit the time that some of the committees require, certainly there'll be a lot of opportunities for staff and for family members to get involved in very specific work that we would anticipate will come out of the major findings from our surveys and our focus groups. As of tonight, we have about 20 staff members that identified interest in participating and about 30 parents and community members. That's up maybe 20 participants from when we checked on Monday morning. So we'll continue to encourage people to get involved if they can, if time permits. But that's a pretty good response and a pretty balanced response given the vision that the board has set forth for the next couple of years, and certainly one of the SMART goals that will be discussed tonight. Yeah.
So we've had 50 volunteers so far. What's your goal? Is there a like number that we're targeting to get a well-rounded sample of our community?
There really isn't. The increased participation will come over the next number of, after the next number of months when we identify what the priorities are. So any good strategic plan usually doesn't have any more than 5, maybe 7 focus areas. And within those focus areas would be another opportunity for people to get involved, to discuss matters or participate in matters that would be more of a inch wide and a mile deep. So for example, let's say one of the focus areas that come out of the strategic plan might be instructional technology enhancements. That then would be another call for people to get involved who have that specific interest. I'm sure that another interest or a priority that may come out of the strategic plan, something along the lines of maybe facilities improvement. Yeah, that would be another opportunity for folks to get involved.
So it's not now or never right
Correct.
now. They'll be okay.
Yep.
And can you give some ideas of what kind of, if you're calling them committees, what types of things are people going to be discussing? How are you going to be sorting them out?
Initially, there'll be a lot of data analysis in terms of some focus groups and surveys that the facilitators will put out in terms of anticipated needs or priorities that they feel the district should be focused on. So that group will help prioritize those, go through a facilitated process, much like our board retreat. If you think of that, but just with a bigger audience of 20, 30, or perhaps 40 folks. Those then, the opportunity for people to participate there will then lead to some R&D, some research and development in terms of, okay, what are forward-thinking schools doing in the area of facilities management or instructional technology? And some of those members may stay on and get more involved, like I said, inch wide, mile deep, but these committees are mostly 30,000 foot level, looking at the input and feedback from all stakeholders and helping us and helping this board identify what some of the drivers will be over the next 3 to 5 years. Then there'll be a brief pause and very likely a public discussion with the board and a board meeting. Then we will transition into some of the action plans of how we'll make these things actionable, how we'll collect data on whether or not they're working, as well as the timeline anywhere out between 3 and 5 years.
So from the pool of volunteers, who is going to form the committees? How do they pick? How does that happen?
So we've asked folks to identify any affiliation, if they were staff affiliation by school, if they're a parent at school, or schools their children go to, because we want to make sure we have representative balance. We also will need to get back to folks to say, here's when the groups can meet. Can you meet or not? And if not, then maybe we perhaps find a replacement. So we're maybe 2 weeks away from making that determination.
That was it. Thank you.
Yep.
Before we move on, just wanted to point out that I believe the deadline for people to submit their applications is October 8th.
Correct.
So
Yeah. We're trying to have a quick turnaround. So folks can fill out that Google form. It's basically name, email, school you're affiliated with, and 2 very brief open-ended questions. Then that will give us a pool of folks to discuss next week and to make sure we have representation, not only from all 5 schools, but that we also have representation of parents and community members, business leaders, so on and so forth. So we tried to give ourselves a big enough window between the deadline of October 8th and the potential of an introductory meeting on, I believe it's October 20th. So we may have to recruit some folks to make sure that these groups are well-rounded in terms of affiliation.
Are we including students in this phase of the strategic plan process?
They're going to be, I believe, included in the breakouts in the specific focus areas after we evaluate them.
All right, anybody else? Okay, so that brings us to, thank you, Joe. That brings us to our presentation and discussion. Tonight we'll be finalizing our district SMART goals. And we have prepared wording, our proposed wording, I should say here. So let's start with the first one. We're going to discuss these, and if we change any of the wording, or if you guys have any questions or problems with this, we'll tweak that. If not, then we can approve these and move forward. Our first one is the Princeton plan implementation. The draft SMART goal as written reads, in preparation for the new grade level configuration of our 3 elementary schools in the 2022-23 school year. The district will develop a communication plan specific to the Princeton plan transition, provide targeted professional development for elementary school staff, provide transition activities for students and staff, and host a series of parent informational meetings. The board will schedule progress presentations at their meetings during the 2021-22 school year. First, any questions about this? All right. Any suggestions for improvement or changes on this one? I'm going to go around the room, say yes or no. Corey?
Okay.
Ben?
No, I like.
Okay. Alexis?
I don't think so. The only thing that's kind of on my mind is there a part about transitioning transportation that should be part of this? I don't know if that belongs here or not, but it's just a thought.
What do you mean by transitioning transportation?
Well, I don't think that we're clear. I mean, I'm not clear on how our transportation looks for the students for next year. And that's a big part of the implementation process.
Right. I would think that would be part of the parent information meetings.
Okay.
Right, Joe?
Yeah.
And part of the communications of the plan leading to the transition.
Okay.
The only thing I wanted to see was more of a detailed timeline, putting more concrete dates down, so when people know when to expect this information.
So how about we set a date for having concrete dates when people will get information? Or when do you think that might be feasible? Rather than putting it in our SMART goal, why don't we?
Well, we certainly could, toward the end of the SMART goal, have monthly report outs here at board meetings.
Okay.
Start with that, and then typically what we like to do is provide the information to the board and the community, and then we break it down to PTA meetings or. Last year we did little video, volunteer video meetings, but we certainly could commit to a monthly report. Our team has been meeting with principals. We've been meeting as a district team, preparing for everything. So certainly there is enough to report out.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Lisa?
I think that it's good the way it is, and I like the addition to Ellie that you made and suggested as well. Report out, I think that's a really good addition.
So when will you decide what topic, how will you decide what topics need parent forums? So is it we present monthly, and then from there we make our decision if that presentation warrants a parent forum follow-up? Is that what you're envisioning?
Yeah, I'm working with the elementary principals and their PTAs. The PTAs are still going through a organization discussion of how the PTAs will be organized this year, whether it be one K-5 group or specific to school. So certainly they're part of the conversations. I meet with the PTA officers monthly, and this is a standing item on those meetings as well. So yeah, we try to partner with the parents when it's time to speak with them and try to encourage people to come to a PTA meeting to hear about district business as well.
So you envision using the PTA as kind of a platform to start.
Will be one, yeah. So last year when we were going through the evaluation phase, we certainly tacked on discussions around the Princeton plan, the PTA meetings, and then held separate ones by school, or then we just held open forums.
So it looks to me really the only thing you need to add is that the board will schedule progress presentations monthly at their meetings in the 2021-22 school year.
So I do want to comment around that. I wouldn't say monthly, because you don't want to have a presentation just to have a presentation. I would think at the beginning, you would want to have presentations as needed, but then as you get closer to implementation, you would want more frequent presentations. I just,
Can you say at least monthly?
you could say at least monthly or at least bi-monthly, you know, and then eventually it will get more frequent. You just don't want to have them to have, you know, every meeting should have a purpose, a reason, and a specific agenda. And, you know, I would be concerned that the administration would be taken away from the work to focus on this meeting, which may or may not have hot topics to discuss.
But at the same time, it shows the community that things are moving forward, things are being addressed, and that it's not just, it's an update not just to the board, but to the community that this is what was looked at this month, this is what our goals are for next month. I think it's important that the community knows what the process is.
Yeah, that could, so I think it's a mixture of having standard, let's say, email updates or posted updates. So here's what's going on, here's some of the information. Whether or not you want to take everybody's time to have a full-on meeting, I think needs to be.
I don't think that's, no, I'm talking about adding a bullet point to the superintendent report monthly. That's how I understood it.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a half-hour presentation with slides, just
And that's
a,
fine. Yeah, just so we
at
report
least
on
touch
it.
base monthly.
Yeah, not having meetings for monthly.
Right, yeah.
Right, so when we say monthly meetings, that's what we're saying.
Consistent and updating.
That's exactly it. So that's,
Right, half their.
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so that one was pretty quick and easy, very nice. So we'll move on to our second one, which is the strategic plan SMART goal. We're already moving forward with our strategic planning. The second strategic plan SMART goal says by November 1st, 2021, the district will establish a strategic planning committee consisting of parents, community members, staff, administration, and board members. The strategic planning committee is charged with presenting a draft comprehensive strategic plan to the board by March 15th, 2022. The board approved strategic plan will be formally introduced to the community at the Board of Education meeting no later than May 1st, 2022. This will include a roadmap that details the timeline, methodology, decision makers, and expected outcomes. We'll go reverse around this time. Sorry for Lisa.
I'm good with this one. I think I like the deadlines that we have established in this. I think they're reasonable. And, I think it's nice and concise, but just.
Hi, Alan.
No changes.
I'm good.
Good.
Corey. Wow, this one was quicker than the other one. I like it too. All right, this seems like a very quick process, but for those of you who've not been here through the whole process, we spent some time discussing how to formulate SMART goals during the summer, and then we had a meeting last time, and I put a lot of thought into this, but our SMART goals are coming together very nicely in our final product, so that's what we want. Last one is financial planning. During the 2021-22 school year, the district will develop a 10-year financial plan that will include short and long-term goals, active participation in advocacy initiatives on behalf of the district, facilities management, and a financial communication plan with the community. The board will schedule financial planning presentations at their meetings during the 2021-22 school year. Or you get to go first this time.
So I would like to have a target date on this.
The target date for the
Having the
whole
actual
thing.
plan completed. So it says we'll do it during the year. It says that we'll have presentations in 2020, so everything, but we don't actually have a target date. We'll have time to complete.
Yeah, this is a little tricky because the plan is really an approved budget by the board to set forth to the community. And that our budget needs to be locked in, and the board has to approve our budget in April in order to go to the voters in May. All of these sort of expectations that become part of budget development take place when we begin the budget process in January. So Alexis and Jen, we commit about 90% of our board meetings and board meeting time developing our budget in public going through different proposals, going through different financial calculations, so on and so forth. So these activities, for example, the 10-year plan, how to participate in advocacy, are going to be embedded in that budget calendar. And we can spell those out. For example, the budget calendar, forgive me, I don't know if it was approved yet, but should be shortly in terms of what to expect specifically in each Board of Education meeting starting in January, by program, by function. So we can add some of these to our budget calendar so that we make some of these deliverables time bound based on our existing schedule. Sure.
You suggest making the date for this, you suggest making the date of this plan after the meeting?
Yeah, we need to look at so what we do is we look at our budget. We look at the demands and expectations of the budget. So we start with when the budget vote is.
Yeah.
We have to go back 30, 45 days to make sure the board approves the budget. We usually leave about a month of wiggle room in case there are last minute developments like increase in state aid or decrease in state aid. So really, we roll up our sleeves and get into budget planning January, February, and March. That's at least 6 meetings. Sometimes we schedule additional meetings. And when we're not meeting as a full board, the finance committee is meeting on the off weeks. So if you remember the finance committee, you are going to be inundated with this information. What we do for purposes of communicating with the public, we look at our board meeting dates and we put self-imposed deadlines on those. So for example, typically one of the first presentations I'm looking at Lisa's is PPS. She usually presents in early January. Margaret, in terms of staffing and instruction, is one of the last presentations because we want to have more data on folks who are retired. So some of these activities that are in the SMART goal are ones we have habitually committed to. I think what Corey's asking for is look at the board meeting schedule and assign this to the budget calendar, and we can do that.
And the other thing I'm asking is, do we really need to wait till next year's budget to do this? Can't we just use this year's budget and just get going on it and put together a 10-year plan?
We can, yeah, we have a 10-year plan right now. The 10-year plan, is always based on assumptions. The reason we don't start a budget process right now is because New York State hasn't even begun deliberating on state aid or federal money or those sort of things. So typically in early January is when the Senate, the Assembly, and the governor start talking about foundation aid, transportation aid, those sort of things. So we have more concrete data to use to start developing the budget.
So would it be that we develop, so we have, I know we just have a 10-year projection, sure, but it's not a full budget plan, right? It's not a 10-year strategic financial plan. It's just estimates and some high-level numbers. So what I'm thinking is we have a rolling, right? We set up the 10-year financial plan now before we until next year's budget. And then as we get more concrete numbers, we continuously challenge that plan.
Yes.
And update it with information.
Yes. So for example, last year when we were deliberating the Princeton plan, we had 2 10-year forecasts. One was with the Princeton plan, one was without. And that was a really important communication tool. Another communication tool vis-a-vis that 10-year plan was also the tax calculator. So yes, those are rolling. Those are spreadsheets and calculations we can continue to update as we receive more concrete information. The only information we can tell you right now, and not literally now, but in a couple of weeks, is what we would anticipate property taxpayers, what percentage of the budget they would pay. We have no idea around state aid, transportation reimbursement, federal money, grant money. So that's why it's always a target. It's always an estimate. For those of you who have been on the board for a little while, Enrique always says that this is based on the best information we have at the time, which is why we leave about a month to 3 weeks of wiggle room between when we finish our budget deliberations and when the state budget is approved. Oftentimes when the state budget is approved late, we have already locked in our budget by law Yet we receive $5 to $8 million a year from the state, and it can fluctuate. So it's always a rolling estimate because we can't guarantee to the community that these numbers will be there because they're always negotiated and all.
Jen, were you done with your questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, now Corey kind of stole my track.
I'm sorry.
Alexis?
I'm okay.
Okay. Alex?
So my hesitation with this one is, I anticipate through the strategic plan process and getting community feedback that we might have some shifts in where we want to go long-term as a community and where we're putting our money. So I have a problem with the strategic plan. We have a deadline or a due date of May 1st, but then we're trying to implement this as well. I think we're going to get feedback and information from the strategic plan that's going to impact our long-term 10-year planning. So I have a problem with the timing.
I think that 10-year plan would then change next year when we redo the 10-year.
I'm gonna adjust it, like, maybe it's because it's a rolling plan.
Okay.
I know you're saying.
So
Yeah.
for example, if, and this is a dangerous forecast, if there is a recommendation from a strategic plan focus group to lower elementary class size, that will have a financial impact for the next years because we will need to increase staff when we're implementing the Princeton plan to save resources from Indian Point. So this group will have to make two decisions. One, does this group, the board, adopt that recommendation to lower class size with a dollar sign on it? And then will the community support a budget that will have an increased dollar sign because of the recommendation from the strategic plan? So yes, there are going to be competing forces, and the Board of Education's job is to prioritize what those are and to articulate, any significant swings in expenditures based on what that community feedback is. But just because a recommendation is to do X, we have to fund it. We very well may have to fund it or find funds for it, which is an entirely different conversation to basically say we're going to minimize or reduce program A in order to pay for program B. That would be the spirit of the budget deliberations as well. But in order to do the strategic plan well and to have enough stakeholder input, by having it be a 3 or 5 year plan, but really not being implemented, at least financially implemented until the following budget, then that's just the timing. That's something unavoidable.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we're pretty good with our 3 SMART goals for this year.
So what happens to these now? Are they going to be published somewhere? How do we communicate those out?
I think they should be put on our website.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, with target dates, you mean? We can put the budget calendar in.
Well, yeah, we eventually need to approve the budget calendar. So Enrique and I need to spend some time, look at those mandated reporting dates from the state. Then we put a budget calendar together and we will include the initial 10-year financial plan forecast. We'll be able to identify some advocacy initiatives, but really advocacy is, right to your senator, right to your congressman. Facilities management is a board report that we receive every year. Financial communication plan is how we educate and sell the budget. So those will be by default part of the budget calendar.
And then the first one, we're gonna add monthly somewhere.
We're going to we'll schedule progress reports at least monthly. Okay, excellent, good work. This brings us to our audience comments on agenda items. Carmen, do we have any comments on agenda items tonight? Okay, so I will not read the comment rules at the moment. We'll save that for later. Does anybody feel like they need a short recess, a short break? Everybody, is there anything? Really good to move forward. Okay. All right, so our next item are our committee reports. And Lisa, I think that's you.
Oh, good. Okay, so we have for tonight the Westchester Public School Board Association's recommendations on the New York State School Board Association's proposed resolutions. And we will need to discuss how we'd like to vote at the upcoming convention that's going to happen on October 18th. So I think probably to start, if we could have, does anybody have anything to say or questions about any of the proposed resolutions that were recommended for adoption? Numbers 1 through.
Because Lisa, they only get one vote from HHCSD, right?
Yes,
So we have to-
so we have to
Yes.
go what the vote is going to be.
Yeah, so let's go around the room. Maureen, you have any questions about anything that was recommended for adoption?
All very clear, except for the one that's surprised that there was division on open.
But that goes back to, we had, for those who might not know, Hendrick Hudson School District had submitted a resolution regarding the open meeting law and regarding the requirement currently that exists where board trustees would need to divulge the location where they're participating from and open that location to the public. So that was resolution number 8. And number 9 was Croton Harmon's proposal to amend it to allow a little bit more, they would allow for specific instances where people would be able to participate remotely. And we wanted to avoid that with our resolution and just let that be, but they tackled it. So I think maybe what we should really work on, first of all, is anything that has the little S by it, where it was, the group was divided on the support.
Yeah, could we go over those?
Yeah, we could definitely go over those.
Okay.
So the first one was number 5, which NISBA supports proposals that would generate new state revenues with the dedicated purpose of funding education. The division that occurred with that was because we don't really know what the source revenues would be. Currently, it's Lotto and video, there's a video gaming thing. And with marijuana being recently allowed, and then there's a possibility we could be getting some revenue from that. Do we want the school district to be getting revenue from marijuana sales? So that was the debate that happens surrounding that is, you know, do we really want, and the other thing that happens too is a lot of times there'll be these additional revenue streams that wind up actually taking money away from schools because they're going to say, okay, you're getting this much money from the Lotto, therefore we're going to decrease the funding to school districts by that amount. Rather than it being a net increase, it ends up being a net decrease. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the concern with number 5.
It's a little too wishy-washy.
Awesome, potentially. I mean, the idea is good. You know, we always want to have new ways to generate revenue, but there are some cautions
Yeah,
associated with
I
it.
mean, the money has to come from somewhere, and potentially if you're increasing sales tax to create new revenue or something like that, then it may actually end up being revenue.
But I guess the revenue needs to go somewhere, so if we approve not to take it, then we're giving money to some other,
Possibly, yeah.
right? I mean,
No. I guess the proposal is to generate new state revenue. So would that be new taxes? Would that be new lottery things? Would that be, you know, where are these new revenues coming from?
well, I think the marijuana is.
Marijuana
the
sales?
biggest- It's the biggest, probably cost of the state. I don't know. But it's not going to schools then, where, like, so it's going somewhere, right?
Okay.
So I guess, should we decide?
Do we want want to support this resolution or not? We'll take a straw poll, basically. All in favor of supporting this resolution?
Number four.
Aye. All right, moving on.
The other one that was up for debate was number 9. Where we were divided on that one, on that was very.
That's the current power means all.
So, do we feel that we'd like to support this resolution from Kurt Harmon?
It's just more detail to the
I
one
was
that
gonna say,
we.
it looks very similar to ours, but just more specific.
More specific.
It's too specific.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Yeah.
I think it overreaches a little bit. No disrespect to our neighbors, but all in favor of supporting number 9? All against? Okay.
All right, and then the next one where there was division was number 15. New York State School Board Association supports state legislation to establish guidelines for school districts for identifying and capturing data and creating metrics for initiatives that mitigate the damaging effects associated with climate change so as to more effectively communicate expectations and monitor outcomes when planning and implementing school budgets. The concern with this was that it was going to be an unfunded mandate and something that school districts would have to sink a lot of money into. Well, the the objective and the purpose of it, we all agreed was a good one, but we're just concerned about the funding on it. So that was the insight into that. Any questions about that one or thoughts?
Yeah, how are they going to determine which are the damaging effects of climate change versus something else?
Do you
Just
know why,
increased flooding and storms or?
Right. what drove Shenandoah to submit this? Did something occur there? Do you know that?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. That was not discussed.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we'll vote.
When?
I guess we'll vote.
Okay, all right, let's vote. All in favor of Rule 15? All against? Okay. All right, I have one other question that is not asterisks here. How do we say that word? Number 11. It says municipal calls upon the state legislature and the governor to provide funding for assistance to school districts to allow them to make and implement decisions in the best interest of the global environment, including and especially in facilities improvements, transportation, and upkeep. What do they mean by in the best interest of the global environment? Is that just using environmentally friendly materials or,
Yeah, I believe so. It was, there was some concern that this could again become an unfunded mandate. But it seemed like in the end that the bulk of the people on the call that I was part of felt that it was worth, it wasn't specific enough that it seemed like it was going to turn into a fund mandate. It was just trying to encourage the governor and legislator to provide funding to assist us in doing things that would be culturally, environmentally responsible.
all right, thank you. All in favor of 11?
So we want to take a group vote on the other ones that are 1 through 17, and then we can do the ones.
Sure,
that
why
are
don't we do
not
that?
recommended.
Does anybody have any other one that they want to pull out for discussion before we have a before we have a vote on that?
Yeah, it would be only the ones that were recommended for adoption.
Yeah.
There's another
Right.
section that's not recommended for adoption.
1 through 17. So all in favor of 1 through 17, except what we have said otherwise?
What about 19 and 24?
Oh, those we'll talk about afterwards.
Oh, okay.
We're getting to those next. So
Okay.
just 1 through 17.
All right.
All in favor of? Okay. All right, so then there's the ones that are resolutions that were not recommended for adoption.
Okay, are there any questions about any of these ones that were not recommended for adoption? Want to discuss any of them?
Well, I guess. Yeah, so 19 and 24, I guess.
Mhm.
What,
Okay. So number 19 says the New York State School Board Association seeks legislative and or policy changes to streamline the teacher certification process for teachers from out of state and those with previous teaching experience. So the recommendation from NISBA was to be opposed to this. West Pubb, when we discussed it, wanted to support it. Because we felt that there would be, people on the call felt that there would be a way of trying to help increase staffing and shorten that pipeline and get people from other states if needed into here to help us to increase our staffing. So that was the thinking.
But they didn't provide any, what that streamline. There's
No,
no
they
details
just-
of what that streamline
No.
really means.
Trying to go back to that kind of information on it, but it seemed like it was,
Yeah, didn't really speak in much detail.
no, they
Yeah,
just,
it needs to have more detail on it. I don't know if,
yeah,
our administrators want to weigh in on this at all? Do you know anything about this issue, streamlining the teacher certification process?
There are some hiccups with out-of-state, with individuals that have certification from out-of-state. Sometimes they have to pay a fee to receive New York State certification. Sometimes they have to take a content test or any number of tests to have their certificate reciprocated. Some states already have an agreement that if you're certified in one, you're certified in others, but not all states. So that's part of the issue, and also part of the issue is that New York State Board of Regents that governs education in the state does not have any authority over teacher development programs in other states. So there is always the fear that credentials and certifications comparing any two states in the 50 states are not ideal or not identical, which then would put additional pressure or additional costs on the school district to train those teachers to learn what teachers from New York State have learned or the skills that they have.
So there's not like a New York State teacher board test that they would have to take to be able to practice in New York State?
Yes, depending on the certification, yes, they would have to. And so what I understand of this is that they're trying to streamline that by not having those requirements in place anymore.
So if you're qualified to teach in Michigan, you could come apply.
Yeah, without all the details, that's how I would read into it perhaps.
What do most other states do, you know?
It's changed a lot in the last 20 years. I don't know what others do. I know that there's no uniform standard across all 50 states.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
Any other questions about this? All right, all in favor of supporting this particular item? Opposed? What?
Is this support me?
Wait,
I was gonna support
You're
it.
going to support it?
If the district wants to take on the expense of training the teacher from out of state, with the information that we're being given available, that's how we're interpreting it. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, we hire someone from out of state that hasn't met our criteria, but the district is willing to take on the expense of bring them up to our level. I don't, puts that on the local level, it's at a local decision.
The issue is that they wouldn't even be eligible for employment to begin with because they wouldn't have the minimal credentials.
I think what this would do then is allow for some legislation changes to policy changes to streamline the teacher certification process. To make it simpler or easier for people. But this would be what they'd be advocating for. So we need to decide if that's something we think this should be advocating for.
Yeah, look, if you go to a college or university in New York State, you are very likely to be your program of study and your certification in your degree is likely already pre-approved by New York State, because we're all operating either under the SUNY system or a credentialing system that SUNY gives to private schools. So the idea is if you go to Albany or Ithaca or SUNY Portland and you finish that particular university's program, they will almost guarantee you certification. It's not the case if you're out of state. So part of the debate could be that we're giving a little more flexibility or credence to out-of-state individuals when New York State is trying to keep the certification process in-house.
But it also gives more flexibility to our college students from New York State who want to go to teacher colleges in other states to come back here and teach.
Sure.
Actually, that's the situation with Jim at the principal in the high school. He went to Connecticut to do his PhD and now he's having problems getting the state to recognize his PhD.
It's, every state has their own criteria.
Are there any states that, sorry. Are there any states that would be concerning to us that they don't have strict enough standards for teacher certification that could be at risk?
Yeah,
I would say like the minimum baseline across the country is probably pretty good.
Yeah, I-
Just states are.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to. It's really, that's a higher ed, that's assuming system conversation.
All right, so all in favor of supporting this resolution, say aye. I'm going to change my vote.
I don't know.
4-2. 4 yes, 2 no.
All right, and then number 24, this bill should encourage laws, regulations, and policies that promote alternatives for school districts when purchasing non-instructional services that do not give BOCES an unfair competitive advantage. This is from Ardsley School District, and they had recommended, they put forth a similar resolution last year that was voted down. It was a very close vote, I have to say. The idea behind this is that the way things currently work, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but when there's things that we need to purchase from BOCES, we have to go to the BOCES that we're a part of. And we can get a waiver if we want to go to a different BOCES that might be able to provide those services in a better way, like the way that we like better, or that might have more of a targeted specialty in that particular area, like Southern BOCES, I think is specializing in technology. Yeah, they have a technology background. So this would allow the districts to be able to shop around a little bit easier between the BOCES, I guess you could say, to be able to get the best price, and to be able to get the best, their choice of where they want to go for BOCES. It really only, I think it probably works the best in our area where we have so many BOCES that are nearby us that we can, participate in or we can draw from. And I think that's part of the reason why NISBA opposed it, was because they didn't want to have this competition between BOCES, but in our area, it would make sense. And having to apply for that waiver every single time we want to go outside of our BOCES to get things is a very time-consuming process. Ardsley talked about trying to get help with the superintendent search, and it just took months to be able to get the waiver and to get the help because they wanted to go to the different BOCES for that help than the one that they were normally using.
And it's also outside those, even if they don't want to use BOCES, right? I mean, they can choose to use another agency.
You could go outside of BOCES for these things, but you don't get reimbursed at the same level
Correct,
of
at
state
the
aid.
same
Right.
rate or
Right.
percentage, correct?
And Ardsley, I would gather, is a district that doesn't receive a lot of BOCES aid. So it is not necessarily financially suitable, or there's no incentive for them to use BOCES because their aid may be so minimal that they can buy the service, at through a contractor or a third-party agency. So really, this gets into wealth ratio, how wealthy school districts are, BOCES aid. It can really get into the weeds in terms of state aid calculations and those things, which are all dependent on property value. It all is based on how wealthy your community is based on the state education formula. But you're right, we have to exhaust our BOCES before we are approved to use services from a different BOCES. I don't think in my time, I know Lisa, Margaret, Enrique, and I are working with BOCES all the time. I don't think we've ever been denied that opportunity that if our BOCES doesn't have that program or service or consultant or whatever we need to order, we've always been approved. There's some paperwork with it, but my guess is this goes back to state aid, BOCES reimbursement, and whether or not those are incentives for wealthier districts to use BOCES. So if I were Ardsley, I would support this. I would, and if we were a district that would remain around 10% BOCES aidable, it wouldn't hurt us because we always would be able to receive BOCES aid. So it makes sense when it's proposed.
So again, it seems like it adds flexibility for those districts who are able to take advantage of this, but perhaps doesn't hurt districts that cannot.
Wouldn't this also
Encourage competition between BOCES to improve their quality and keep them on their toes. It's almost like a more open market economy with BOCES and gives us more options by having.
That was instructive.
But that doesn't preclude you from getting BOCES aid. It's more like BOCES aid.
Yeah, and if you network and have a relationship with your BOCES and they're forward thinking, they will be able to find that private whatever you need, and BOCES would be able to bring that in and then create a service. Not all BOCES will do that, but you're right. For certain purchases or certain school districts, it would foster more competition. But the way I read this and knowing what I know about Ardsley is urging laws and regulations and policies would help a district like Ardsley feel that they can compete on the open market law.
All right, all in favor of supporting this proposal 24? Okay.
Is there anything else in the not recommended adoption for adoption resolutions that we might talk about?
And this annoying fly, there is this leave, that would be lovely.
Any other questions from the public?
I do not. Does anybody else have anything?
No.
All right, so are we, let me think how to word this. Are we all in favor of opposing those resolutions that were recommended to be opposed?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Were there any other committee reports? Before we move on, sorry. Thank you very much, Lisa, for being so involved with the Westchester Putnam School Board Association for doing this work for us. It's, a lot of added responsibility on top of your great immense responsibilities. So thank you.
I have a quick report from the safety committee. We met 2 weeks ago. We discussed mandatory faculty and staff training and those due dates, required safety drills within all 5 buildings, and then some building specific concerns were brought up. Any questions? Can you share the building? But yeah, there's security. Okay, yeah. Unfortunately, because of a lot of our safety and security issues, get rid of them all. Sorry.
All right, that brings us to, anybody else have committee reports? Sorry. That brings us to board comments and new business. Anybody have new business they would like to bring up? Okay, so before we get to our audience comments on our non-agenda items, I'd just like to say I see our teachers are here again this evening. I'd like to thank you for attending our meeting. I hope you heard some interesting conversations tonight, and thank you for modeling for our students an appropriate way of civic engagement. You guys have been lovely. Over the past 2 years, as the public might know already, the district has been coming to the table to engage in good faith negotiations with the teachers union and teachers union's negotiating team, and we will continue to do so until a contract that is fair to both the teachers and the taxpayers of the community is agreed upon. The board does value and support our wonderful teachers and the amazing work they do for our students in our community, and we too hope for a swift and mutually satisfactory resolution to the contract discussions. So again, thank you for coming this evening. That brings us to our audience comments on non-agenda items. I'll read the rules first, and then I will first person. So, because we feel community engagement is important, the Hendrick-Hudson Board of Education welcomes public comment during this portion of the meeting. Please note that the public comment period is not designated to be a discussion. The board is here to listen. Please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions this evening. This is because the board trustees and the superintendent take your comments seriously and want to have sufficient time to thoughtfully process your comments and to research issues if need be. We will consider your comments as we deliberate at future meetings, or we'll have the proper staff member follow up with you at a later date as appropriate. To maintain an orderly meeting, the board has allotted 15 minutes for each public comments period, which may be extended by board consensus. Guidelines for those looking to address the board are as follows. Each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to the public comment section and will be called in the order in which they have signed up. We would ask that groups designate one individual to speak on their behalf. It is not permitted to cede your time to another speaker. When called, please step up to the podium and begin by stating your name and affiliation, if applicable. Letters, petitions, or other written materials should be handed to the district clerk prior to your comments. All comments must be directed to the board. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. That's me. The board vice president, Lisa, will be timing comments. She will give a 30-second warning to the speaker by holding up a yellow card and indicate when the speaker's time is finished with a red card. The board may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to participants wishing to speak on varied topics, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. Although we take personnel concerns and individual student matters very seriously, the board is not permitted to address these in open session as per state and federal privacy laws. We would ask that you use appropriate administrative channels for these items. The board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience and in a civil manner, so that our meeting can serve as a model of appropriate civil discourse for our students. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board may recess the meeting until order can be restored. Please remember, if you prefer not to participate in the public comments portion of the meeting, written comments to the Board of Education may be submitted in lieu of speaking. Please see the agenda or the district website for contact information. Okay, we will now begin our public comment period on non-agenda items only, please. Carmen, can you call the first speaker?
Our first speaker is
Is that Mr. Bealoff? Is that? Yep. Thank you for your written information here. Carmen will make sure that everybody gets a copy of this. I think there are only 3 copies available this evening.
So my name is Christopher Bealoff. I'm a lifelong member here at Princeton School District. Along with my brothers and sisters, we all started our education here at Princeton. My son came home with this band note. He was very excited. And wait, I should stop for a minute, because I hope you show some mercy on me with the time limit. I didn't pre-rehearse this. I don't know how long it is, but I just wanted to go through the information I gave you in the packet. There's only, I see 2 people signed up. You show some mercy on me with the time limit. So Lucas comes home with his band notes, and I'm reading through it, and I see they reference this National Band Directors Guidelines. And basically, the cut to the short of this, they want him to wear a mask and cut a hole in it. And right there, it's like you're jeopardizing the integrity of the mask. And more concerning to me as a parent, you're restricting his airflow of blowing through a trumpet. Now, I was very happy that he wanted to play the trumpet. My last 6 months in the military, I was honor guard, and I wanted maybe he play taps for me one day, right? Maybe not too soon, but thought that would happen. So the first thing I did was call Mrs. Teresi. I followed the chain of command. Mrs. Teresi looked into it for me, and she says, "Oh, I know exactly where that came from, Mr. Bealoff. It came from the band notes. They're doing this National Band Directors Guidelines." So, all right, I went home. Didn't really sit well, because I'm still thinking to my son, restricted airflow, maybe let's research this a little bit more. So I Googled National Band Directors Guidelines. I don't come up with anything, but I come up with these other two things that I have in the package that I gave you. And so National Band Directors Guidelines came up with nothing. Well, to back up a little bit, after Mrs. Teresi forwarded my email to the superintendent. That was on September 23rd, still no response by September 30th. So I get on the site and I forward it to every one of the board members that I could find, and I didn't have a response. And I'm kind of even silly for even being here, because nobody responded to me. It's just not a concern to anybody else, whatever, but it's a big concern for
We
me.
did not receive that email.
I went to, maybe the superintendent didn't receive it either.
It's possible.
Okay, all right. Moving on, that's besides that. So anyway, I got two documentations that came from the Google search of National Band Directors. One came up with this aerosol COVID response committee report that there is some information in here. If you go to page 4, the committee does not intend to determine policy. That's basically all I got out of this guidance. But these guidance really don't mean anything, I don't think, right? Because all we keep focusing on, if we're going to look at guidance, is this. And I believe this is up to date. It's the New York State Department of Health intern guidance for in-person instruction, pre-K through 12 schools during COVID-19 public health.
Thank you, Mr. Bealoff. We'll have a look at the information that you sent, and I'll make sure that Carmen gets this to all of the board trustees.
Can I just finish one little bit on this thing? There's only one other speaker.
For consistency and fairness, we have to keep the time limits consistent so that we're not playing favorites between different topics. And so,
Reiterate in an email.
thank you. Yes, if you could resend that, that would be great. And maybe I'll check our spam boxes also. Possibly got blocked by our server. Carmen, do you have any other speakers? There's our next speaker.
I had something that I prepared, but I'm not going to speak about that. I see that you have moved public comment to the end. And I respect all the time in closed executive session that you spend and the hour and 20 minutes that I just spent here. In good faith, because you're not trying to discourage public comment. Perhaps Mrs. Koch could send out a Google form for community members to sign up to speak before we get here, so we don't have to get here at 7 o'clock. Because I've been here for an hour, 20 minutes, but something that I'm not going to be able to say, trying to text my son to make sure he's okay, but I have no Wi-Fi here. And he only has Google Hangouts because he doesn't have a real phone. If you really want to encourage public comments, let us sign up beforehand so we can show up at 8. Very orderly. And we can engage in public comments. Like I said, I mean, I'm never going to get through this, and I do appreciate it. I know you're taking time out of your day, and it's a lot of time, but the community deserves to be heard. And an hour and 20 minutes sitting here not being able to contact my son, I mean, you know, because you probably have kids. You're home with your husband. My husband's working. So this is the first time I'm leaving my son home alone. That's right, don't judge. He's in 5th grade. Let us sign up and speak and come at the end. If you really in good faith want us to speak and want our involvement. I know I'm running short, but I did sign up for the strategic planning committee. And it said that the hours were during the day. So I didn't know if I should really sign up or not sign up because I'm a working mom. So although I did sign up, I would hope that the people who work have the ability to participate in that, because I really do want to participate. I want this school district to be like I remembered it, and the school district that I used to teach it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take your suggestion on sign up ahead of time under consideration. And thank you for signing up for the strategic planning. I know when I participated in that 8 or 9 years ago, I did take several days off of work in order to be able to participate in that process. So thank you for taking that time. Carmen, do you have any other comments? Okay. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I have a motion to close the meeting, please? Second. All in favor? Aye. Have a good evening. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks on Wednesday, October